Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to put together a couple of outfits inspired by a show I have recently binge watched on PBS Masterpiece. The show is All Creatures Great and Small, and it is actually based on a series of books written by an author by the name or pen name of James Herriot. He was a vet in the north of England in the Yorkshire Dales from the late 1930s, I believe, through to the 1970s, maybe later. And the books and the show are stories from his life as working as a vet in the Yorkshire Dales. And it is a really sweet show. It's beautifully done. The first two seasons are set, I believe, 1938 to 1940, and the costume designers have done an absolutely phenomenal job with the costumes in this show. The garments look truly worn and period appropriate, and while yes, I am not a dress historian, I can't say with absolute certainty that every piece they've got on the show is exactly period appropriate. I can say with certainty it is extraordinarily immersive, and they have done a really beautiful job with all of the different garments. In particular, I really love the garments that the main characters wear. James and Tristan are always wearing these really beautiful knit sweaters and knit sweater vests in these beautiful cables. And Tristan has this gorgeous Fair Isle sweater vest that I absolutely love. Siegfried is wearing these gorgeous wool suits in it that look like they are made of just the most luscious suit fabric you could ever want. And of course, the women in the show, Helen and Mrs. Hall, have these really gorgeous sweaters. Helen has a couple of just very sweet short sleeve sweaters, some with some really beautiful yoke details. She's also got a couple of sweaters with that beautiful Fair Isle pattern that was very popular at the time. And Mrs. Hall wears these combinations. They were called twin sets, where you would have a short sleeve sweater underneath and maybe a long sleeve sweater cardigan over the top. And they bring out the characters so beautifully. There is this youthfulness in the sweaters that Helen has, and yet a sophistication in some of her other garments that show that while she is one of the younger characters, she is very responsible. She has been on the farm helping her father out, since her mother passed away and so forth. And so she has this wisdom about her, this elevated sophistication, and yet the popped sleeves and some of the lighter, softer colors give her that youthfulness that I really think they've done a beautiful job with. On the other hand, with Mrs. Hall's sweaters, you can see around the cuffs and sometimes around the necklines, they're a little bit worn, showing that maybe, these are sweaters that this character would wear every day, that she would put on before she would start work, keeping the house. And those are details that I think are really spectacular and make the show so immersive and so lovable and likable, especially knowing the costumers had some of these sweaters knit specifically for the show. I did go on YouTube and did a little bit of sleuthing for it, and while some of the outfits and some of the sweaters were pulled from the racks that had been used for other shows, the costume racks, it sounds like many of the sweaters were actually knit for this show specifically, and I thought that was really fantastic because it shows a beautiful dedication to finding the right thing for the right period for this particular show and these particular characters. And after doing that little bit of sleuthing, I got so excited because I really actually love knitting, even though I'm not particularly good at it, and I am notoriously slow, but I really love it. And that idea of I wanted to make a couple of outfits inspired by All Creatures Great and Small, and then, oh my gosh, a sweater. I could knit a sweater. I could knit something really beautiful just like they did for this show. It got me really worked up, and I decided I just had to do it. Now I happen to have a book, this beautiful book, The Vintage Shetland Project by Susan Crawford. My sister bought me this book a few years ago and I absolutely adore it. It's basically a coffee table book in my house. I just really love going through all of the pages and looking at all of the pictures of all the sweaters that I want. But the sweater that I really want and want to use as an inspiration for today's video is the Gansen sweater. She has the pictures here, but in this book there are also the stories behind them, and she also has the patterns and the charts we can see here. And I want to use this particular chart as inspiration for the sweater that I want to make. Now, as you may have caught on a few moments ago, I admitted I'm not a particularly advanced knitter, and I'm notoriously slow, as I said. So unfortunately, I don't think I can make truly one of the sweaters from this book or mimic one of the sweaters from the show. Those sweaters are all done in these gorgeous, Shetland jumper weight, 2-ply, very small yarn, probably on like size 1 to size 3 US knitting needles. And that would probably take me a year to make, which might make a fairly long YouTube video. So instead, I thought instead of making an entire sweater, I might make a slightly smaller project, a sweater vest, which is still really popular. It's still shown in the show quite a bit. I found these pictures online, as well as these ones, of women from the time period wearing sweater vests. So they actually were very, very popular. So making a sweater vest isn't out of character for the time period or for the show. Now, I don't know that I can do a full Fair Isle pattern top to bottom on the vest if I want to get it done on time. So I thought I would just do a band of Fair Isle, maybe something across the yoke, which was also popular during the time. And Helen in the series wears, I believe, 2 or 3 sweaters that just have patterning across the top. Mrs. Hall has a beautiful twin set that just has patterning across the top yoke. So I think it will be appropriate, but also a little bit more doable for me for the project today. Now for this, I did go ahead and raid my yarn bin to find what I could, and I happen to have 3 skeins of yarn that are the same kind of yarn. They are Wool Ease yarns, and they are a medium weight, so a worsted weight, I think. They're not quite a chunky weight, but it's a little bit bigger than, I think, a DK. So these are all the same, and I am hoping, because it's closer to a worsted weight, it's a medium, that it will knit up as fast as a chunky yarn will, so that I can get this done in time. These are also a wool blend. It's a washable wool blend, and it has, well, I'm sorry to say it's only 10% wool. The rest is acrylic and viscose, but it is still really lovely, and it does have some wool, and it does still have kind of a wool smell. Maybe just because I had it on top of other wool yarns that I had in my bin. But at any rate, the washability of it is probably a really good thing in my closet right now while my kids are still pretty little. So I've got 3 skeins of this gorgeous yarn. I have 2 seasons of All Creatures Great and Small to binge watch for maybe the 3rd time while I attempt to make a sweater vest to go with some outfits in my closet, to make some All Creatures Great and Small inspired outfits. So I am hoping in the next few clips you will see some knitting. Me in attempting to do this. I'm not going to go through it step by step with you guys. As I've mentioned, I am not a professional knitter or particularly adept. I kind of muddle through. So I was thinking maybe on one side of the screen me knitting, and on one side of the screen beautiful clips from the show before we wrap it up with hopefully some very fun outfits inspired by my new favorite show, All Creatures Great and Small. Let's get started. All right, my dears, and here we are with our finished sweater vest. I went ahead and paired this new vest with two different outfits, a pair of slacks, which Helen wears very frequently in All Creatures Great and Small. I also paired it with a sensible all wool tweed skirt, which also would have been very popular in the 30s and 40s for women. It is a close fitting skirt, which would also have been popular at that time because they were rationing both after the First World War and going into the Second World War. And while the pleat detailing around the hemline isn't perfectly period appropriate, it's not too bad. I had a lot of fun on this video. I had a lot of fun knitting up this sweater and using the colorwork pattern from Susan Crawford's book, The Vintage Shetland Project. I will admit, I was winging it most of the way on this sweater vest. I did not have a specific sweater vest pattern that I was following. I made a gauge swatch with the yarn that I had and the knitting needles that I had. I measured it out, and then I measured like my waist circumference and so forth, and just kind of ran with it with a basic shape. I did a small V-neck, so I did want it to come down to a V, but I wanted to keep the collar high because while I did find pictures of vintage V-neck sweaters that were fairly low, as I had shown in the beginning of the video, I noticed when I was looking through many of the patterns that I have that many of the sweater collars were actually quite high. They mimicked a lot of the shirts and the dresses from that time period, so I went ahead and kept it nice and high, but with enough room to peek out some collars for some of the shirts that I have in my closet. I know that many of the colorwork vests from that time period were flat knit. I did go ahead and knit this in the round, and then I worked short row shaping across the back of the shoulders using the basic wrap and turn method, and I think it worked really nicely. It just barely brought it up. I only used, I think, 4 to 6 rows for that since it is a worsted weight yarn, and I do think that worked pretty darn well. Overall, I'm really, really pleased with my new kind of cropped sweater vest. World War II, I'm ready for fall, even though we're just starting summer. But I don't know, something about this just got me. And then of course, over this last week, we actually have had some rainy, overcast weather, and so it got me back into the mood of doing it. I was a little bit concerned that we were gonna have these blisteringly hot 80-degree days, and then here I am being silly making a part wool sweater vest, but it did get a little bit cooler, which helped out with trying on and finishing up these last little bits like the collar edging, the side details, and then of course washing and blocking. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. I know we weren't sewing, but I hope you liked the idea of a couple of knit pieces to add to your vintage wardrobe, and I hope that you enjoyed going through some of the All Creatures Great and Small aspects and outfits. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you liked this video, if you like vintage wear, please hit that like and subscribe button. I hope to have you along for other adventures.